Hello, hello, fellow Liberians. Welcome to this platform once again. This is Vote 24 TV, and you are following the Kakis Dialogue. The Kakis Dialogue is the Kamara Abdullah Kamara Intellectual Dialogue, and we come to you to make sense of the arguments from various political extremities to ensure that the Liberian populace, the Liberian public get a better sense of what is being said. We have to do this over and over to connect with the Liberian people and allow the guys who are in the middle to have a voice and to come to the table and bring the necessary correction to the debates that are in the corridor from our various political polarities. Now we will be looking again at the issue of harmonization. We'll be looking at harmonization today, and we will be looking at it purely from a public sector reform perspective, and giving some background and some context to what is obtaining in our country. I have with me this dialogue, Comrade Amos Chiakofa. Comrade Kofa, you're welcome today.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you, comrade. Thank
you. So quickly, I would just like to say what drove us to really bring up this issue of harmonization once again. There was a letter from Edwin Snow. There was a letter from Edwin Snow to the Senate, Honorable Edwin Snow to the Senate. Let me try to find that letter. Let me try to find that letter. I'll post the letter. Oh, see. I think the letter is not going, but I'll post the letter sometime later. But let me play for you or a clip from So here is the clip from Minister Ngafuan.
Increases, but because you're pushing me, I'll be pushed to say some things. I'll be pushed to say some things. That word used, I don't like to use it. You the word harmonization. We have reversed harmonization at the LNC. This year, this budget, 2026, harmonization is being reversed at the GAC. This year, this budget.
Don't talk again.
At
Hold on a
the
minute, second.
Supreme
Talk clearly again. Talk again clearly.
increases, but because you're pushing me, I'll be pushed to say some things. I'll be pushed to say some things. We have reversed that word used. I don't like to use it. You love the word harmonization. We have reversed harmonization at the LNC. This year, this budget, 2026, harmonization is being reversed at the G.
So the minister said that the government has reversed harmonization at the LCC, and the government has also reversed harmonization at the GSC. Those are two integrity institutions. The government has reversed harmonization at the LCC and reversed harmonization at the GSC. Komikofa, you follow the politics in Liberia. You know harmonization was at the center of the campaign debates. Now, what's your take with the minister's statement? Usually, the CDC folks, especially Mr. Tue, who oversaw harmonization, argues that harmonization cannot be reversed. So he posed a challenge to the Unity Party folks, and this is why the minister came up with this statement. So what do you think about it?
You know, I've been following the debate, and let me first of all begin by stating that for me personally, I think harmonization is good for Liberia. And the CDC did not do much to have really educated our people and allow their opponent to run with the whole issue of harmonization for them to gain political dividend. Because they, as a policy professional, the rationale that went into harmonization dated as far back as what we were doing. Imagine during the Ellen administration. And of course, it wasn't bad. We were just coming out of war. And, you know, the president at the time wanted to encourage diaspora Liberians, you know, professionals, because the country suffered a lot, so much brain drain during the war, and wanted to encourage people to come back home. So as a result, the president, Madam Sadi, at the time created different pay scale where even ministers in her government at the time had discretionary authority to augment other people pay, and people were getting Liberian pay, and then some general allowance, but there were special allowances that were in the confine and that were left with the discretion of the ministers. So a minister could bring his friend from the diaspora, whether they were qualified or they were not qualified, they would pay them. Why other people that were doing the work would not get good pay? So there was this discretion, there was no uniformity in terms of the pay grade. People across government ministry and agency, some were getting better pay, what they were doing low job or less work, while others were getting less pay but more work, though they were similarly situated or are similarly situated. And so that was the kind of discrimination in the pay grade. And so harmonization brought all these things together to make sure that there is fiscal discipline in our system to promote equity and fairness, equal pay, equal work. All right, transparency to take that power away from the minister, where the minister will have a discretion because that minister doesn't like you no matter how you're working, how hard you work, you wouldn't get that pay. But the minister would prefer breaking his girlfriend, pay him more money, and she does nothing. So these were the kind of thing harmonization decided to address. So a country like Liberia must embrace harmonization. And as an economist, I think that fiscal space that harmonization brought to that country situate the country for prosperity. But again, the folks from the Unity Party are running with this thing and making it look like it's a crime. And because the CDC itself did not do a good job in terms of educating our people, their propaganda machinery was not sharp enough to make harmonization look like it was there for the Liberian people and for prosperity. And so then the legal argument now in the public sphere is that if Comrade Augustine Ngafuan, Prime Minister of the Republic of Liberia, says that they are reversing harmonization, the argument is harmonization is a law. If you say you're reversing it, you need to go back to the legislature to repeal. But they has not been repealed. And in my opinion, I don't think harmonization I think you must do it holistically if you want to do it. And don't do it selectively. All right? But again, if I were on the other side, on the other side, propounding a legal theory too for the government, the fact that even a portion or part of the budget try to reverse harmonization and the legislature approved that, and that was because the budget also is a law, can we technically argue that that aspect for sure is justified that it's being repealed because the budget is a law? So if the minister is saying that they are reversing or repealing harmonization, and that they start with the institution and that budget went to the legislature and they did not argue about it, the president signed it, it became a law, then it can also be argued that indeed they are reversing harmonization in that context. So back to you, Bo.
Yeah, so exactly what you are stating is a serious issue for us to consider. And so this is what Edwin Snow wrote in response to what he heard from Minister Ngafuan. So he wrote the Senate pro tempore, and he wrote regarding the alleged reversal of harmonization. So here he says, I herewith write through your office to respectfully bring to the attention of the Honorable Body a matter of significant public concern arising from public pronouncement reportedly made by Minister Augustine Ngafuan, Minister of Finance and Development. Then he goes further to say, Madam President pro tempore and distinguished colleague, reports in our possession indicate that Ministry of Development Planning has reviewed the harmonization of remuneration at the governing institutions, at some governing institutions. include but not limited to the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission and the General Auditing Commission, as well as the judicial branch of government. There is no gainsaying that these reported actions raise serious and fundamental questions regarding legislative authorization, compliance, and approved budgetary decision, and adherence to the existing legal framework governing public sector remuneration. It can be recalled that the Act to establish the National Remuneration Standardization of 2019 remains in full force and effect, having not been repealed, amended, or otherwise. So at the end of the letter, he's calling for the minister, to appear. He's calling for the minister to appear before the plenary to be able to ask him by reverse of harmonization and so forth. But that is a legal argument that can be made to, just as you laid it bare, that the budget is a law and you have a law specific harmonization and you have a budget a law that is general to financing government activities, which law supersedes in terms of the specific question of harmonization is an argument that could be looked at. But I think the Edwin Snow letter and the Ngafuan statement both are missing the point of harmonization. Both are missing the point of harmonization, because the real language, when harmonization first to be used, it was about what you were referring to, the dual payment system, the dual pay system, like allowances in US, salary in Liberian dollars, and the idea that those allowances were basically discretional to the head of entities, and so they were not applied evenly to employees or civil across. Majority of the people who were enjoying the allowance were friends of ministers who came from abroad. They were the same area in America, and he calls a friend down and said, I can give you a job, and the friend is just going to say, how much are you going to give me? You can't take care of my bills in America. And the man say, oh, my man, I'm going to give you $1,000. And that's it. That is how the allowances were used. And from a real perspective, we try to make sure that both allowances and the basic salary were apps and made one as it was before the Ellen Johnson administration. So harmonization basically talk about that issue of collapsing the pay in a uniform pay system. But right now, when you say you are reversing, it means that you probably want to go back to introducing allowances. That is what it's supposed to mean. So if one does not mean that, then it means that he does not understand what harmonization is. Because harmonization means you have to go back to the allowances, and Ngafuan was the one who introduced the allowances. That is the allowances. The allowances is what our senior comrade Abraham Mitchell loved to call the budgetization of corruption. Yeah, where the corruption started from, when Ngafuan introduced the allowances into the public finance space. Go ahead,
That's
Gabriel.
true. Yeah, you're right, Bo. And you know, this is where, you know, the CDC folks, and they brought this on they brought it on themselves. You know, when they took state power in 2017, they had men that could help them drive the agenda. There were a lot of good things that they did, but their propaganda was very dull that it turned against them. No sound person in contemporary time can look at harmonization just because it emanated or this law was passed under a Joshua regime. And you come and say this is a bad law for Liberia, then you don't mean business for the country. We are already a struggling country. We are not fiscally disciplined. This policy tries to pull us in check in terms of how we deal with our resources. And both that is true. Ministers were not even ministers. They are all ministers appointed by the president. They were not making the same salary. Directors were not making the same, even though they are all directors, but you have some directors that had cars, some didn't have cars. Some directors were making $5,000 while others were making 1,000 plus. And this law is telling us that we need to establish a standardized, a national remuneration standardization scheme so that we all are in the same bracket. So what the policy does is your allowance you were earning, this other part, it brought it all together. And then it put you in a different tax bracket. So I think what the unity parties guys need to look into, if they feel that the income tax that they are tasking people is high because of the income bracket they fall in, so that there can be more money in the people pocket after income tax, they should now work on how to adjust the tax system. But you cannot continue to hide behind harmonization and make it look that it's not good for the country. It is good. It's a good law. Both as an economist and as a lawyer, I said this in terms of the legal implication is good. In terms of the economic significance for the country is good. So if Comrade Ngafuan said he reverse it, then he's advocating that we go back to the status quo, where they will have millions of dollars in their suitcases and they can decide who to pay, who not to pay. And that's the kind of thing they are, because they brought it. That was their system. You know, that system was operated under the Unity Party. So they don't want it. So they want to reverse it. And that's why they are fighting. But if they mean well for Liberia, they should work to make sure that this policy is effectively implemented across every sector in every governmental sector to help us save some money, and we can pour that money into development.
Let me tell you what the CDC missed out on is that I think they were in a serious rush to effect this policy, right? In a serious rush, because the context was that the World Bank and the European Union, IMF, were all pushing for a revisit the wage bill. The wage bill was huge. As early as 2018, the World Bank, the IMF, and through the European Union and the donor community for a reduction wage bill. And one of the ways that the CDC sought to reduce the wage bill is carry on harmonization. Meanwhile, meanwhile, the governance commission, the civil service agency, and the government agencies of government, such as the Ministry of Gender,
Is the internet going? Is it bad? Are you there, Bo?
yeah, is getting bad. Yes, I'm here. Are you getting me?
Yeah, yeah. Yo, you were talking, but then it's
Oh,
like,
yeah, okay.
are you there?
Yeah, I think the
Yeah, I mean,
connection, drop. Yeah.
okay. But I'm getting you now. Yeah, you were laying your
So,
thoughts.
institution or agencies like the Ministry of Gender, the Ministry of Gender and Social Protection benefited from the reform from the point of the restructuring of ministry because it was culture of gender. The Ministry of Gender Child Protection was restructured such that the social protection function came under the Ministry of Gender. And from that point, we move on to where we to a staffing analysis. Staffing analysis, because so we did the design, there were we developed the act creating the Ministry of Gender and Social Protection, and put legislature, and it got passed. After that stage, you have to do a staff analysis that will be able to tell you what are the manpower requirement in terms of skills and the quality of manpower, will be. And once you reach at that point now, then the ministry gets into a particular position where they can benefit from a certain, grading and setting salary classification. In the dating, the ministries had not do that process, and so the salary that ministry like as ministry, after their the salary that finance salary that the civil service agency was making, or that of the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection was making, was very high compared to other ministries that have not gone through the reform, that we were carrying on. And so the CDC met this, and part of the way to respond to the reduction in the wage to be able to say, oh, let harmonize across ministry. Let get every body working in the same position to get the same pay. So they did it in a kind of hasty way, not following trajectory of the reform, but basically to achieve what they want to achieve. But on the overall, harmonization did not begin with the CDC. Is a good thing, and the CDC just demonstrated the political will that we could not get from the early administration, because there were ministers who were benefiting from the discretionary salary scheme. They were always vote against the medium term pay reform strategy that was sent before cabinet for for the ministers to okay. Every time we cabinet, the ministers went against it and did not have a consensus around the implementation of the pay reform strategy. And so the CDC demonstrated immense political will to effect the harmonization, or what we refer to as a collapsing of the pay to the minimum in terms of pay grading system. All the Unity Party needs to do now is to go back to the strategy and try to work in line with the strategy to make sure that the gaps that the CDC left.
You're right. Well, I totally agree with you. And, I think one of the reasons why the CDC could, maybe perceive as they were in a rush to do this, they were a new government. Many of the folks coming to power have not had the opportunity to serve in the public sector. And so these were also preconditions for the institution like the IMF, the World Bank, to lend, to extend credit facility or support Liberia. So the CDC, being a new government, saw it as an opportunity to be able to fast track the process so that this funding and assistance from the international donors will come in for the smooth running of the government. And so I think that could have been one of the factors that necessitated this. But as you really said, this did not start with the CDC. There was a work in progress. And certainly so, the CDC demonstrated the political will to get it done. Because under the Unity Party regime, even though it was policy developed, it was still on the books, but the political will was not there to get it to the finish line. And the CDC got it to the finish line. And so what the current government needs to do now is to make it work perfectly instead of fighting it and making it look that it is bad. When it is not bad for the country, it is good for our well-being. It is good for the country. It is good for development. From an economic perspective, the harmonization is good. It's a good tool we can use. We harmonize all of the salary. If you are a director in government, irrespective of which ministry you serve in, you make the same pay grade. If you are a driver, as long as you are a driver in government, you make the same depending on the different grades. And so it's a good thing. All that needs to be done is to just perfect it. But people are fighting this as though it is a bad thing. It is not even supposed to be. But again, it's because CDC did not do much in terms of educating the public the relevance of this policy in terms of national development, the relevance of this policy in terms of equity and fairness, the relevance of the policy in terms of fiscal discipline. They didn't do it. And that is why the other folks are pushing this thing and making it look that it's bad for the country. And it is not bad, it's a good thing. Are you there, Bo?
Yes, certainly. Because public sector reform is not implemented through laws and projects. We have the public sector modernization project. It is actually
Yeah, man, I'm
sustained.
not I'm not seeing you. I'm not seeing you. Where are you? You have it.
Okay, let me. It is
Uh-huh.
actually
Okay.
It is actually sustained through credibility, predictability, and institutional memory. So the party government, Minister Ngafuan, supposed to be able to connect with the reform effort, because the reform effort did not start under the CDC administration. CDC scored a big point by the political will to collapse salary in first instance. So when a senior government official asserts that the government has reversed harmonization, the immediate issue is not whether salaries were adjusted. The deeper issue is what such a statement signals about reform continuity, like you were saying, comrade. That is the issue. What is signaled about reform is the issue. You know, in reform environment, especially war state like Liberia, signal that ministers give out matters. And if you look at the form I show you, everybody was knowing their head. In fact, the moderator even Ngafuan to repeat, because they connected this whole campaign of harmonization, they connected harmonization to the political campaign, and they think that, I mean, you run your propaganda and won the election, but harmonization has nothing to do with propaganda. The reality is the reality. So you can't use propaganda to lead. But it's necessary because you wanted to come to power. So anything you did to come to power, yes, the end justifies the means, but you cannot honor harmonization, because if you honor harmonization, you honor the civil servants.
But bro, let me just come in. If you know, why if they really mean well, if they think the harmonization of salaries, remuneration, if it is a bad thing for our country, and they really honestly want to undo it, why they have to go around? Just come or we'll go to the legislature to repeal the entire harmonization process. Then we know that it is no more. Then you give Liberia your alternative. But you say you're reversing harmonization. And, one of our comrade, King Prince Andrew, posted something and said, harmonization, I don't know, also talk about increases and decreases. And I don't like to use that one because when I was doing English, we talk about increments, and so then that's where then my man Alfonso Tiarik here said, my man Tue said there was not, this is how it was. And then Winston Marvel said, my man, we're talking about repeating the law. We're not talking about increases and all of that stuff. But the thing is that why you want to begin, the civil servant were the people your thought were harmed most, in terms of the harmonization. In your $1.2 billion budget, what stops you from reversing harmonization for civil servant? And you go to LACC, a handful of people that you can count, and then you say you reverse harmonization, and then you go to government, GAC, you say you reverse harmonization. Harmonization never ever prevented, or it doesn't prevent increasing salary. So
Simple.
by increasing someone's
And you
salary,
call it
it
reversal?
does not mean that you reverse harmonization. Harmonization only say equity and fairness. When you
Yeah.
pay John Brown $300 for the same work, Peter John must get the same $300 for the same work. I think that's where the equity and fairness comes about. So it doesn't mean if you increase a man's pay, it means that you are reversing harmonization. No. Harmonization in no way. And that's where true argument is. Harmonization never ever even stop increasing people remuneration. It only pushes the point that when you are increasing, make sure that that same increment will commensurate with the other person too who is putting in that work. So if you decide that you will pay somebody 50 cents an hour and the people doing the same work and putting in the same amount of time, then let them get that same $50. If you increase the wage bill, the minimum wage to $1.50, it shouldn't be one sided, it should be across. That's what we're talking about, to harmonize across government sector. So by increasing GAC personnel salary in the budget and LACC employees in the budget, in no way does not suggest that you are reversing harmonization.
There are a lot of work to do. There are a lot of work to do. There are documents like the pay grade strategy, right? There is a pay and grade strategy, right? They could put that into place, defining the grade, the grading system, institutionalizing the grading system across the civil service. They could do that. It's like taking something and taking it to the finish line. The Unity Party government must demonstrate that willingness to be able to help strengthen the civil service. But you cannot come and say you're reversing something that is irreversible.
Yeah,
Because to reverse it is to place us back into that same old bad system.
absolutely. So let's take for
You
if you are a minister in this government, I don't know how much, whether you are sitting as a minister of finance or whether you are at the Ministry of Justice, and then whether you are Ministry of Information, where no money go, they just talk to and see papers. The harmonization calls for if a minister supposed to get 70,000, 7,000 naira, let it be across. Maybe your salary is 6,000 and your allowance is 1,005. It should be the benefit for every minister. One minister shouldn't get more money and more scratch card and more gas lifts, while the other minister, because he's a minister of information, and then you think that their place there, so you pay him less. Does that make sense,
yeah.
Congress?
I mean, yeah, because Minister Ngafuan would have been right if he had
Recording in progress. Hi, hi everyone.
sorry.
Oh yeah, that's good.
So Minister Ngafuan would have been right. For instance, he would have said the minister paying the Minister of Education $10,000 or $20,000 a month. That would mean reversal, because during the Ellen era, when pay was not harnessed, one minister would make something different from the other minister.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this has been the issue. If he has said that, then his statement about reversal would make sense. back to the old system.
Mhm.
That's reversal. But to increase people pay, it doesn't make sense to call it reversal.
Reversal. No,
Harmonization does not oppose increasing people
of
pay.
course.
We harmonize
Of course.
and we increase pay at general ministry, at uh, the CSA, and the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah. It's only fairness and equity, you know. If we are if the minister that draft for the minister of finance driver, the minister of I mean the director general for the Liberia Revenue Authority, the central bank governor driver, not because they are close to people who handle the money, so their driver should make more than the driver who drive for Minister Jeremy Pierre. So once you are driving for a director general or a minister in government, I think it makes most sense if those drivers at that level have the same benefit and the same pay grade. And it does not mean that because
Oh,
they have that pay grade, so that pay grade cannot be increased. Over time, they can get an increment in their pay. It's not reversing that, but we just want to make sure that people are at the same, people who are similarly situated are treated in the same manner, with fairness. I think that's where we are. That's what the harmonization targets. It doesn't oppose increment in people's salary. But when we are doing it, we want to make sure that people similarly situated at the same level should be treated fairly in terms of their pay, and not the same man who is a driver, and the same man is a driver, but the driver get more than they want because the man is not close to the minister of finance, and he's at the ministry of internal affairs. Are you there, Bo?
oh, sorry. This is a topical issue and it has claimed the attention of a lot of people. We see that going back and forth on the Facebook. But this is not about politics. This is tied into uh, the life of the Liberian people, especially the civil servants. And civil servants have to pay key attention to this debate, and they have to do that with all degree of honesty and divest themselves of any kind of political cap.
And oh yeah, Bo, you're talking. And
Yeah.
before my thought slipped from my head, one of the reasons why the comrades in the Unity Party they prefer the discretionary allowance situation because a lot of them, Bo, they're not delivering. But they want to get the puppets on their side and pay them is in the need of consultancy to come on social media to fight for them, to attack people who try to hold them in check. But if they were focused on delivering for the Liberian people and not care about people praise singers because they need to pay their praise singers. So by streamlining the wage bill, it kind of contracts, the employment level within government. So it constrains these guys to be able to bring people in because they can't create job. The only job they can create is CDO consultancy, where they pay people free money at the expense of the Liberian people to do public relations for them. And so that's why they are fighting heads on to in the name of reversing harmonization, which is a bad thing. All right? If they were focusing on the economy, attracting foreign direct investment, Investors are coming to the country and the economy is expanding. They will not have to focus, they will celebrate harmonization in Liberia and will not fight harmonization. But because they want to bring on their agents, their praise singers, give them job, pay them salary while they are sitting at home, get on Facebook and say, oh, the minister is this, he's the best minister, he's there, even though they're not doing anything and just wasting public resources. That's the kind of thing they are advocating for. That's why they said they are reversing harmonization.
Certainly, and this is dangerous. This is dangerous, and we have to call civil servants to attention here. This is dangerous. We have to call civil servants to attention, where extreme power is placed in the hands of ministers across civil service versus the civil servants having those power through the civil service commission. Right now, we don't have the civil service commission. The act that is submitted before the legislature says something totally different that does not put the power in the hands of the civil servants. We need to revise that bill before the legislature and make sure that it is inclined towards protecting the civil servants.
That's true.
So, yeah, we have to look at this assertion by Minister Ngafuan in context, and we have to pay serious attention as civil servants to what is obtaining. We have to pay serious attention to it. So with this, time is fast spent. We have like 6 more minutes. And so, Kamikofa, I will allow you to make your closing comments,
Yeah.
and then we can go.
Thank you, Comrade. And again, I would like to say that, in my opinion, what I said and how I see the harmonization policy, if I were president for Liberia, we will maintain the harmonization and we will perfect it. We will work on it. We look at the loopholes, the gaps, and try to straighten it and make it a good, and make it better for our people. Harmonization in any way, does not oppose uh, increment in salaries. No, not at all. It only calls for fairness and equity. It only calls for fiscal discipline. It calls for transparency because there was no transparency when they had a general allowance under the Ellen regime. We had a Liberian data. Ministers could do anything. They could do anything. No accountability. But harmonization tried to pull that in check. And many of these ministers who are in the Unity Party government today, they are used to that kind of thing because that's what they started with in government. So now that it's not available to them, they want to, they're fighting to get it back. But it's difficult. It's difficult. And they shouldn't do it. And to comrade minister of comrade finance minister, I think it's another opportunity for him that Liberia can remember him two times in our generation, 2 times to be finance minister. You need to do something that Liberian people will remember you of. And it's not just about the social media, and all of this. If the harmonization, instead of thinking about reversing it as the fiscal policy arm of the country, perfect harmonization. Don't fight against harmonization. Do a better job with harmonization. Perfect it so that you will be remembered because it will save the country money. It will put our employees on par in terms of equal work, equal pay. It will promote transparency and it will bring fiscal discipline to the country. And this is a policy for development. and not a policy to kick against. Thank you, Bo.
Thank you, comrade. And this has been a very wonderful show, and we will want to make sure that our people understand what is obtaining in Liberia. And for of the politics, we want to make sure that those things that were said during the campaign are not necessarily things that should be implemented by all means. Harmonization wasn't wrong, but the campaign made it wrong. And because the campaign wanted to make sure that Joseph Boakai becomes president. Now, Joseph Boakai is president. You don't have to destroy harmonization just because you ran on it as a campaign message, as a campaign promise. You can do it in a way that you be able to tell the people that it wasn't right in the direction and we strengthen it. That is a way of fulfilling your campaign promises towards harmonization. Basically, when the people heard you talk about harmonization, they thought about increasing their pay. So if you put in a pay and grade system and be able to increase the people's pay, that would be fine. You have surplus budget this year. You could have increased the people's pay, but you didn't. So it is better for us to stick to those things that are going to help Liberia and don't allow politics to undermine the gains that we continue to make. It has been a wonderful show. Thank you, Komakofa, and thanks to our viewers. We will come to you tomorrow, maybe on this question of harmonization, but deeply looking at it from the perspective of the civil servant, what they have to gain and why they should be concerned about this whole debate, the harmonization question. Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you,
nice,
comrade. Tomorrow.
yeah.